Hello and welcome to the arcade. There was two things that I didn't really do a ton of when I was a kid. Number one, I didn't play a ton of fighting games. Sure, I loved Mortal Kombat, Deception, Deadly Alliance, Armageddon, and I loved One Must Fall, and I dabble in a little bit of Biofreaks now and then. But as a kid, and even to this day, fighting games aren't really one of my go-to genres or types of games that I tend to enjoy that much. And the other thing that I typically didn't do a whole lot of as a kid was watch anime. I would catch the occasional episode of something on Toonami like Yu Yu Hakusho or Inuyasha or something like that, but we didn't have cable at my house, and the cartoons that I was allowed to watch were things like G.I. Joe, and that's about it. But there was one game series that combined fighting games and anime that really resonated with me, and the main game in that series was Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 for the PlayStation 2. It released on other systems too, but I had it on the PS2. And come to think of it, everybody had it on the PS2. My cousin, my friend down the street, me, everybody. But when you look at that game now, it seems like it's a little bit forgotten by time. And I know the developer of that game and that series of games is still active and making Dragon Ball Z games to this day, but I haven't played any of the new ones, and I pretty much stopped after Tenkaichi 3, I think, on the Wii. But out of all the Dragon Ball Z games, Budokai 2 is the only one that really stuck with me, so let's talk about it.
Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 was developed by Dimps and released in November of 2003 for the PlayStation 2, and then later the next year for the GameCube. Budokai 2 is a fighting game set in the Dragon Ball Z anime series universe. The game has a dynamic fighting system that features really fast and fluid combat, utilizing combo-based mechanics where you chain together punches, kicks, ki blast, and special moves into completely seamless attacks. Everybody has their signature abilities from the show, like Goku's Kamehameha or Vegeta's Final Flash. These are really satisfying to pull off in a fight and also stay pretty true to the anime's over-the-top action. The fighting feels really responsive and rewarding, with both defensive and offensive strategies at play. While the game is easy to pick up and play, it can take a while to master the really long combo strings and timing of special attacks. This adds a huge layer of depth for those who want to invest more time into the game's mechanics. There's also two really cool things about this game, the super attacks and the transformations. Like the continuous Kamehameha require you to not only nail the combo to pull off the move, but also use the analog sticks to power up the move while it's in play. And the transformations, like turning Super Saiyan mid-battle, offer a rush of adrenaline as you unleash these iconic forms and their abilities on your opponents. I didn't watch a ton of the anime as a kid or even as an adult really, but it seems to me that most people feel like the game did a faithful representation of the anime. You have all the fan favorite characters like Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Frieza, Cell, and Majin Buu, and they all have their own unique movesets and personalities. The game also has stages that are familiar locations from the show, like Planet Namek and the World Tournament Arena, which further immerses you in the Dragon Ball Z world. Now let's talk about the game modes. The first game mode is the Dragon World mode. This mode is kind of like a board game style adventure mode, similar to something like in Mario Tennis Aces. That might be a bad example, but it made me think of that. So you guide Goku and whatever allies you choose through various iconic locations and scenes or episodes from the Dragon Ball Z saga. Your goal is to collect the Dragon Balls and defeat all the major enemies from the show along the way. So here's how it works. You start on a board game, essentially. The maps or boards are grid-based and the characters move like pieces on a game board. Each character gets a limited number of moves per turn, so you have to strategically navigate the board to either confront enemies, collect items, or reach objectives. While Goku is the main character of this mode, you can also select from a few other characters as teammates, like Vegeta, Gohan, or Piccolo. These characters can fight enemy foes as you encounter them on the map, just like Goku does. So whenever two opposing characters meet on the same space of the board, a battle is triggered. The combat in these encounters is just like the rest of the game's one-on-one fighting system with the classic Budokai combo-based mechanics. As you move across the board, there are spaces where you can pick up power-ups and capsules. These can give you either special abilities for the characters, unlock new moves, or heal you up between battles, or even teleport you across the board. Throughout the Dragon World mode, you'll face a series of enemies including regular enemies and boss characters tied to the main Dragon Ball Z storyline. For example, early stages pit you against Frieza and his minions, while later stages feature Majin Buu as a major threat. The mode follows a condensed version of the Dragon Ball Z storyline, taking you through key events from the Saiyan saga to the Majin Buu saga. Each chapter on the board represents a different arc with new enemies and objectives. There's also hidden characters and fusions that you can unlock by meeting specific conditions in this mode. For example, you can fuse Goku and Vegeta into Vegito or Goten and Trunks into Gotenks if certain requirements are met. Dragon World is kind of like the story or main mode of the game, at least for some people. I mean, it's the first one to select, but if you don't really like the tedium of moving your characters around the board, you might want to stick to some of the next modes. And the next one on the list is the Dueling mode. This one is the most straightforward versus mode designed for players to engage in head-to-head combat without the narrative or strategic elements found in modes like Dragon World. So this is your more traditional fighting game experience where you directly face off against either the CPU or another real-life player. So it's a one-on-one battle focusing purely on individual fights between characters. You can select any of the available fighters from the game's roster, which includes major heroes and villains from the series, all of which I've already named. And you can unlock all of these characters by playing through the Dragon World mode. You have the option to either battle against the computer or challenge a friend in local multiplayer. In multiplayer, each player picks their character and fights to see who can outlast the other in a best-of-3 round format. Before one of the duels begins, you can customize your character by selecting from various skill capsules that you've unlocked throughout the game. These capsules give characters new moves, transformations, and special attacks, adding a layer of personalization and strategy to the fights. I mentioned the battle mechanics before, but the core combat system of Budokai 2 is centered around combo-based fighting, where you use a mix of punches, kicks, and ki blasts. You can also charge up your ki energy so that you have enough to unleash special moves like Kamehameha or Big Bang Attack, stuff like that. You'll also want to get good at defensive mechanics like guarding, dodging, and teleporting. In the dueling mode, you get to choose from a variety of arenas based on iconic locations from the show, like the World Tournament, Planet Namek, and the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, and more. Each stage adds a bit of atmosphere and context through the battles, though the gameplay remains the same regardless of the setting. Although some of the stages do have slight differences in certain areas where you can actually knock your opponent through one of the invisible walls and move to a different setting of the same stage, which is pretty cool. The dueling mode is ideal for players looking for quick, action-packed battles without the extra layers of story or exploration. Overall, dueling mode is the purest form of the game's combat experience. Then we have the World Tournament mode. The World Tournament mode emulates the iconic World Martial Arts Tournament from the Dragon Ball series. It's structured like a typical tournament, and you'll see all the characters that are in the tournament laid out on the board at first, and see who's fighting against who, and see who your upcoming opponents might be. There's different difficulty levels to the tournament, starting with Novice, and you earn a large amount of Zeni or currency for completing or winning these tournaments. They're not always that easy to win though, because you do compete in a single elimination bracket where you fight through multiple rounds. And each match in the tournament is a single round fight, unlike the usual best-of-3 format in other modes. This makes the fights way more intense because a single mistake could cost you big time. There's also the ring out mechanic in the World Tournament mode, which means if you get knocked off the main square platform of the arena, you lose automatically and the match is over. It doesn't matter who did more damage during the fight, whoever stayed in the ring is the one declared the winner at the end. This adds a layer of strategy too, because you might want to use your positioning and combos to push other players to the edge of the arena and then try to knock them out, rather than beat down all their health bars to get a traditional knockout. So I mentioned the 3 levels of this. There's Novice, Adept, and Advanced. You'll probably get the Novice ones on your first try because there's fewer rounds and less challenging opponents. But once you move up to Adept, this is where the competition becomes more difficult. And in Advanced, the toughest level, there's way more skilled opponents and a higher level of challenge. but the reward is always worth the risk because in higher level tournaments, you get way greater rewards such as more Zenny, the in-game currency, and unlockable content like new characters, costumes, or capsules. You can also do 2-player tournaments in this mode too if you have a friend in the room. There's also the option to customize your character before entering a tournament. You can equip different moves, transformations, and special abilities that each can give you an advantage in the tournament. All the matches in this mode take place in the iconic World Tournament stage, which is designed with the traditional martial arts ring surrounded by a crowd of cheering fans. The environment is tight, which adds to the pressure to avoid being knocked out of bounds. The last mode is the training mode where you get a chance to practice without any pressure. There's no health limitations, and you can choose whatever CPU opponent you want to spar against from the game's roster. You can set them to being passive, which is just standing still, making it way easier to test moves. Or you can adjust their behavior to block, dodge, or fight back, just depending on what you want to practice. You can also set up the training mode to display the move list so that you can better memorize all of the different combos and special abilities. And because key energy is unlimited in training mode, you can practice charging energy and using key-based attacks like the Kamehameha or Final Flash as much as you want. You can also do all of the classic transformations in this mode too, and it's a really great way of practicing all the moves before jumping into any of the other modes, because really the other modes don't have any tutorials whatsoever. The things I love so much about Budokai 2 are, number one, the dynamic fighting system. The fighting system is so fast and fluid, and all of the combos feel really satisfying to pull off, especially when they end with one of the key-based attacks like a Kamehameha. I also love the transformations where you get to transform Goku into Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3, and the transformations where characters fuse, forming Gotenks out of Goten and Trunks, and Vegito out of Goku and Vegeta. It's also really cool how faithful it is to the anime. All the iconic characters and locations are here, and it just feels like it does a great job representing all the different arcs and the different seasons that happen in the show. I also love the unique game modes that this game has. The Dragon World mode with its board game style adventure is a standout feature for me, and I love the World Tournament mode as well because it emulates that famous martial arts tournament from the series, which is super fun and competitive and gets you a lot of rewards for progressing really far and winning those tournaments. I also really love the capsule system and character customization that this game allows you. Not every character gets the same moves for every fight. You can change that, you can customize it to what you want to play as. You can even make characters have no abilities at all if you wanted to. One of the nice things about Budokai 2 is, even for new players, it feels accessible. And for players who are familiar with fighting games or even the Budokai series, it also has a ton of depth that is very welcome for veterans of the series. Casual players can get away with button mashing or just doing the normal 5 punches and then energy to pull off a Kamehameha. But players that want to spend a little bit of extra time getting good at the game can learn things like guard breaks, teleport counters, and the longer combos. I also believe that this game's pace is one of the most appealing aspects of it. Most of the battles are really fast and energetic, with characters zipping across the screen, using powerful moves and pulling off dramatic transformations. The spectacle of Dragon Ball Z's over-the-top combat is faithfully recreated in this game, making almost every fight feel intense and cinematic. This game also offers plenty of replayability. Whether you're replaying through Dragon World with different allies, or competing in the World Tournament, or dueling with the computer or some friends, the variety of the content here ensures that you always have a reason to come back. And now, here's just a few of my thoughts on why this game is so fun and unique. Firstly, the fusion of a fighting game and a strategy game. The Dragon World mode is such a cool idea. It really gives this game a unique identity, blending strategy with the core fighting mechanics, while also letting you experience the storyline from the show. Second is the transformations and the fusions. Just the fact that you can input a button combo to transform Goku into Super Saiyan is one of the coolest things about this game. And while it's a little tougher to do, equally as cool is when you're able to pull off a combo to merge Goten and Trunks into Gotenks, and then go Super Saiyan 3 as Gotenks. There's also a lot to love for people who love the source material. I believe almost, if not all, of the original voice actors from the show are in this game, making it a real treat for fans of the series. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 is so good at blending action, strategy, and nostalgia. It has a really fun combat system that's fast-paced, it has great customization options, which I didn't really expect, and it has really cool varied game modes, and all those things make it an exciting and engaging game, whether you're just a casual fan, kind of like me, or a dedicated enthusiast of Dragon Ball Z.
So that's it. I feel like Budokai 2 is still a little bit underrated for how much fun it actually was, even if later games in the series and later games by the developer have surpassed it in some ways. Budokai 1, 2, and 3 still have some of that original charm that I find so endearing. But what do you think? Did you play the Budokai games when you were a kid, or do you still play them to this day? Or do you play any of the more recent games by the developer? I would love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.